Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Today's topic is the Touchpoint customization and will be given by Michael Greenwald, our head of development for our client applications. Afraid the content of the webinar today is quite technical and aimed at the technical staff looking after the platform. So some of the content will go into some technical details that even go over my head sometimes, but it's still very useful also for the less technical people to understand how the customization process works and what can be done with the customizations on the Touchpoint as the end result without having to know how to do it yourselves. During the webinar, we will keep all people muted. We will be recording the webinar and we will make the recording available afterwards. Questions during the webinar can be placed in the chat box or in the question and answer box. We'll monitor those while we have the webinar, and we'll ask Michael the questions if required during the webinar. But at the end of the webinar, we will also open up for a question and answer session where we will unmute the people so they can ask the questions directly to Michael. Okay, I think that was all I needed to say as an introduction to this webinar. So I will hand over now to Michael, and he will take you through the rest of the webinar. Michael, over to you.
Thank you very much. So welcome, and let's start. So on the agenda today, first I'm going to show you what is available from our documentation. We're going to talk a little bit about what is LESS and what is CSS, how to compile it, how to use it, just to give a little bit of introduction if people are not that familiar with this technology. And then I will show you some examples of how to customize Touchpoint CSS, and I'll go to several examples of this, how to customize the logo, how to customize other things. So documentation is available in the Android support side. This is the link here. I can show it to you. This is the documentation here. Describe basically everything I'm going to present you here. Some example about CSS, how to configure it in Touchpoint, how to compile LESS to a CSS. Everything I'm going to display is covered by this documentation. So a little bit background for those of you who are not that familiar with LESS and CSS terms. So CSS is a very common language for describing presentation of web pages, including everything from colors, layout, fonts, etc. And LESS is one layer above it. It is not something that browser can read and understand, but when you compile it, you generate CSS files. So LESS files are in order for you to create complex CSS files with an easy way. The most easy example for that is the use of parameters. So if you have common color, you can in LESS define a parameter, use it in all sort of places, and since CSS does not support it, the compilation is done to a CSS file. Touchpoint, like any other web page, can only read CSS files, so it doesn't make any difference to change LESS files unless you compile it and generate CSS files. How do you compile LESS files? So first of all, I would say that I suggest to use LESS file only for big and large and complex customization. In most of the cases, you will see that CSS is good enough. Only when you're creating a big gadget or you want to customize a lot of things, then LESS can be in use. In order to be able to compile LESS file, you need a compiler. We found a very easy compiler running over Node.js. So first you need to install Node.js from this link, and then you just run this command to install the less compiler, and you have the compiler. Now, in order to compile file, you just create the less file and run this command. For example, let's see, look and feel.less, that's the less file, and look and feel.css, that's going to be the output CSS file. And these are just parameters to make it work with our infrastructure. Let's have a quick look of how this is done. So I'll delete the CSS file. So I have this simple.less file. Simple.less file is this one, which is quite an easy less file. I can demonstrate the use of parameters. So here there is a parameter called color base. I define it once, and I can use it all sort of places. So if I want to compile it, I'll just run this command. Let's see, simple less, and simple CSS will be the output file. And at the end, I've got the CSS file. You can see they are simple, but not. There are some differences. For example, there is no parameter. The value is displayed whenever I'm using the parameter. So this was a quick example of how to compile less file. I hope that it was easy enough to understand. So how do you use this technology in order to customize Touchpoint? So the way we did it is that Touchpoint come with CSS files that we are using as our default. So they are always loaded first. On top of them, if a look and feel customization is defined in admin point, I'll show you where to define it in a second. Then these files are loaded on top of the Touchpoint files. So whenever you override there, is overloaded, and if you don't change it, some things or most of the things, they will stay as they are in a default presentation. The admin point customizations allow you to set different customization files per tenant, even per role or per group. It does support, and also very recommended, to use partial override. So no need to entire every CSS definition. It will just make it a large CSS customization. Override only the thing you want to change, keep everything else, so you enjoy upgrades for free. Another thing, don't change any of the factory files, because either the less file or the CSS file, because they will be upgraded and we will override your changes. So what we recommend is to do the changes here in the server. For example, this is my Touchpoint installation file. I have this styles folder where all the factory CSS and less files are located. And here there is a look and feel folder. Here you can put whatever customization you want to put. They will be kept. They will not be overloaded by any upgrade. And if you want to see how to do it in admin point, so the look and feel customization is part of the setting gadget. There is a parameter over here, the look and feel, where you point to a CSS file, a single CSS file that contains your customization. In the following examples, I will keep it as it is. There is no need for me to change admin point reference. I'll just change the content content of the look and feel file, and you can see how quickly it reflects on Touchpoint. So few examples. First one is an example for quickly creating a theme. Now, this example is different than all the other examples because for creating a theme, since we need to change a lot of CSS files and basically to change parameters, color parameter in Touchpoint, we need to change the factory custom.list file that comes with Touchpoint. That means that this file will need to be overridden by you after any kind of an upgrade, but you will see this file is very small and there is only 2 or 3 changes that need to be done there, but still you need to change it with your customization values and compile it again. So let's see how this is done. So I have here the custom.list file. This file is stored here on the style. This is the location of the file. Now, this is a version of it that is already customized. What I've done is I've changed these 3 colors, and this one is as well. They are parameters, so they are in use in all the other CSS files. That the only way to change such a global thing is by changing the custom.list file. So I just created a version of Touchpoint for St. Patrick's Day. It's quite ugly, but it makes the point. So in order to make it happen, I have this look and feel file. This is the default look and feel file that you get out of Touchpoint installation. It does import everything, including this custom.list that we've changed. So it will import this changed file. And then afterwards, when importing the rest of the file, it will be compiled with the customized values. So in order to do that, I'll just run the compilation command for compiling this lossless file. Since this is quite an impressive list of imports, the output files will be quite large one. And that basically includes all CSS definitions relevant to Touchpoint. Everything is included here, and that's like 1100 and 400 lines, quite a big file. But nevertheless, there is no problem of loading this as customization. So now the only thing I need to do is refresh Touchpoint, and when I refresh the login page or open the browser again, the change that I've made will be reflected. So you see it's already changed. I'll explain later on how this is happening and what are how we know how to customize this before you even logged in. But just to show you how it is showing up. So everything is white, orange, and green. Quite ugly, but that's reflects almost everything around Touchpoint. So that's a global change affecting the entire application. Now, how does it happen? So the Touchpoint is in the first time you log in, Touchpoint keeps a cache of the link to the I'm sorry, that's not relevant to this. It will be easier for me to display it on the next slide, which is how to customize the logo. Because here you want to customize the login screen, put your logo in, but we don't know which agent logs in first. So the way we do that is that we are caching the link to the customization file at every time an agent login, and by default represent the customization according to this when you open the login screen. If you change it, it will change. It's just a link to the customization file. So this is how we can customize the login screen. Let's have a look at how can I do that. So in order to do that, I have this example, this one, in which I've modified only a specific path of the CSS. I've changed the login logo. I just pointed to a different URL, and I just needed to change a little bit the margin because the picture was in a different size. So only thing I need to do here is just compile the last file again. Now you can see that the look and feel CSS file changed. This is the output of this customization. And if I'll go to Touchpoint and refresh it, I get a customized login screen. Again, this is done before I getting the agent to authenticate, because we are caching the last customization that was used. So if then an agent from a different group will log in and get a different customization, next time it will be changed. Okay, so that was the second customization option, and this one does not require to change any of the Touchpoint factory files. The only thing you need to do is create your own last file with just overriding this URL, and this is it, and that will be kept across all upgrade. Now, for the last example, I want to show you few additional ways or example of how to change other things. In Touchpoint, it is all across the application. I just picked up several things that maybe will be useful, or just to demonstrate the capability of the CSS override. So in here we will see customization of the call web menu, how to customize the call info to always show, change some icon for gadgets, and manipulate chat panel to be different. So let's see how this can be done. So I've created this last file to customize it. So first, I've customized the code menu width. I wanted to make it a little bit thinner. So I picked up everything that related to the width of all the relevant components in Touchpoint, and I play with it. I will show you in a second how you can play and debug it. And I ended up changing these 4 places to a different width. This is what was needed in order to change the width. Let me just apply this configuration, and so you'll be able to see it while I'm talking. So let's put in a chat call. Okay, so I don't know how familiar we are with Touchpoint, but this is a little bit thinner than the factory version of it. What else do I have here? So in here, I wanted to keep the call info always open. This is this one. So instead of playing with this icon, I wanted this to be always visible. In theory, I could also make this icon disappear because now it's no longer needed. So how did I did that? This is the definition I needed to do here. So display is a very powerful CSS property, which block is if you want to force something from being displayed, and display of none is also very powerful, which is to make something invisible. Now in here, I've used the important hint, which is also something very powerful in CSS, because CSS built on inheritance. So you might have several places defining what will be the behavior of something. If you want to force something to break all the inheritance and force it to be a certain value, you use this important hint, and that's override every other definition that might be relevant. The next thing I've done is to play with the height of the chat panel. So instead of 55% or it was 45%, because we displayed 2 rows of chat, I wanted to display just a single row, so I can see less chat in one screen, but I can see a long transcript of the chat. So the only thing I needed to change here is just to change the height to 95%. The other thing I wanted to do is change the chat gadget icon. So I've just replaced the backward image with a different image I found online. So you see here that's a different image that I like more than what we used to have. And the next thing is this whole thing here that I will show in a second how it looks like. It's quite a big customization, but the purpose of it is to show you cool things about CSS, which can be very, very nice. In this example, I wanted to make the chat call blinks whenever there is an activity in a chat call that is not on focus. So for that, I'll add a new chat call. So I have 2 chat calls. I'm now handling this one, and to simulate that there is something going on this chat call that I'm not looking at. So if there is anything here, you see here now the call card is blinking. So with some not that complicated CSS, I found it online very easily. I can control the blinking of the chat panel. So the last thing I wanted to show you is how you can find things to, how do you know what needs to be customized? Because I might be an expert on the Touchpoint CSS because I'm familiar with them, but for someone who's less familiar, how easy it is to find something. So I want to show you that it's quite easy. And let's take, for example, this icon. Let's take an example and say that I want to make it disappear. I don't want agent to be able to hang up calls from here. So the first thing I will do in order to find out how to customize it is right-clicking on it and inspect the element. This will give me in Chrome, and that's available in any of the browser in one way or another. They all have this development tool. Chrome for me is the preferred tool. So here I can see the HTML that represent this page, and more importantly, I can see all CSS definitions. I can see here that there are quite a lot of CSS definition coming from from several CSS files. Most of them coming from the chat CSS, but some are also coming from a Bootstrap, which is a common library that you use, site CSS, login. A lot of definition are spread all over the place. So first, you want to check the class that is relevant, because you can see the class are here and represented by the path. So this one is specific for the hang up, which is good, but this far, for example, is common. This is like a class that applies for more than one place, and you can see them highlighted over here. So if I'll change something here, that is going to apply for all other icons that are represented by this class, and I don't want to do that. So for me, the way to do it is this class, because this is what I want to change. So in here, I can start playing with it and see what the outcome of my customization before applying it. So I want to make it invisible, so I will just change the display property to none, and that's now invisible. There is no, it's not effective. It's not functioning. You cannot click on it. You cannot do anything with that. It's totally make it disappear. So after I've played here and I'm know what the chain I want to make, and I'm happy with that. The only thing I need to do now is to carry this to my customization. So the easier way is just click on this link that will open the CSS file that this page is using, and just copy paste this path that I've changed. Now I'll paste it here to the customization file, and I'll delete all the things that I haven't changed, because I don't want to override them. I just want to override this property. This will ensure that in the future, if we will change something in the other property, that will not be affected and will not be overridden by this customization, because this customization will include only the thing you want to change. So I've added this here. I'll just recompile the customization file, and now if I'll log off, this will be now the presentation without me needing to do anything on debug. So there is no option to hang up the code here. Well, this was it. I tried to keep it not too complicated and quite quick, to make some time for questions, which I'm sure you probably have some, because I know this is a hot topic and also not that simple to grasp. So if you have any question, this is the time now.
Okay, so the way we're going to do that, if people can raise their hands, and then I'll unmute people to ask the questions, and we'll get the different questions. And I see the first person already, so I'll unmute Tausif Nabi for the first question. Attendee is self-muted. Emily, can you help here? I can't see to get Tausif off.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. My question is, as I have seen, this way is to change the look and feel of all Touchpoint, but there is a way to change the look and feel from a specific tenant.
Yes, there is a very easy way to do that. So in admin point, you have an option to work on a specific tenant. And sorry, I need to go back here and edit the tenant. And here I can customize the setting gadget and set a different URL customization specific for this tenant. You can do that as well for a specific group or specific role. So you can define a customization per tenant and then add something that is unique for a group or a role. And if there is something that you want to provide as a landlord, you can do it as the basic settings.
Okay, and if you customize a specific tenant and you log out, the browser will cache the previous CSS of
yes,
the agent. Yeah.
Yes, the Touchpoint will cache the last agent logs in. So if you have cases where the same computer used for agent from different tenants, then it will cache the last tenant that was using this computer. But I guess this is not the case. So Touchpoint will cache the customization file for the last agent that was logged in, and most likely this will be the same agent logging in the next time.
Okay, if you change the agent, you don't have to clear the cache of the browser, or maybe the CSS is cached and not taking taking the new one.
No, you don't. No, you don't need to change the cache because browser always override the CSS cache. The only thing we'll do is before you log in as the first agent, you will still see the customization of the previous agent. But once you logged in with a different agent from a different group or role, then Touchpoint gets all the gadget definition for that agent and update the link to the customization, and the Touchpoint will be changed. So when after you log in, you will see the new customization applies. No need to update cache or anything. The only point here to remember is before you log in, since we don't know who is going to log in, we will use the cached value.
Okay. And I have one last question. I don't know. I am making a customization for a client, and I have to hide the wrap-up window because the client wrap-ups from their application, from their CRM application, and it's not necessary to show up the wrap-up window. What is better, to catch the event of the wrap-up window, or in this CSS set the display property to none?
I think CSS to hide the screen is the easiest way.
Okay, but it's possible to catch the event in a functional gadget and prevent the window to pop up?
It's quite a complicated task because you can easily catch the event. That's not the problem. The problem is that Touchpoint factory code also registered to this event. Since this window is a factory window, so you need a way to hijack the event, to catch it before Touchpoint code catches it. There is an option to do that with priority to the pub/sub mechanism. You can register with higher priority. This will make sure that you are getting this first, but then you are getting into some kind of a rest condition if you will be quick enough to hijack the event. And there is also an option not to hijack the event, but to load a functional gadget that will override the Touchpoint Angular controller. If you want to look into that, that's can be a very powerful tool, but you need to understand how it's being done. It is documented on the Touchpoint integration guide. So there is an example how to override the Angular directive or Angular controller that we are using, and just make them ignore the subscription, do not subscribe, and things like that.
Yeah. Okay. We will also, before we go into too much details about creating new gadgets, just wanted to notify people that we will do a second webinar that will cover the integration capabilities of Touchpoint as a separate topic to the customization one. We wanted to keep it simple for the first one and just do customizations. We will do a follow-up that will cover all the integration capabilities of the Touchpoint client and how to create your own gadgets and functional gadgets, standard gadgets, etc. And on the web app item, you could of course also do simply the setting no web app in the admin guide, and you won't get a web app.
Thank you. That's the most simple thing.
We keep it simple. Okay. Anybody else with any questions? I see some more people have raised their hands. Jeffrey, I see you've raised your hand. Let's go over to your question, and I see you've also entered it in the question box. So you want to ask?
Yeah, I'll go and ask. It's a simple question. It's somewhat related to Touchpoint customization, and hopefully Michael can answer this question. And you just mentioned you're going to have a second webinar regarding integrations. But regarding Touchpoint, the customization about this part is if we were about to integrate with a third-party CRM, I know sometimes in the past I've been told that Touchpoint requires a license for essential objects for the browser for a third-party integration to happen. For like an example, a CRM called Oracle, an Oracle CRM. I was just wondering, is that still a requirement using Touchpoint, or is that something, Michael, you hopefully can answer this question? It's just basically a yes or no question.
Well, shall I answer it, Michael? Because we have in our part list, we have what we call the Touchpoint connector. And that is a connector license that enables you the integration capabilities of both to desktop applications and web applications. It doesn't matter where you integrate your client to, but we have a license price for indeed utilizing those connector capabilities. However, it really depends on the commercial models that the account team has agreed with your side, because nowadays we normally try to position subscription bundle prices of Touchpoint that always include that connector license price. So it depends a little bit on your commercial model that you have with us. But yeah, there is a separate license, but it's probably included in the bundle you have.
Okay, so you're saying that the bundle it most likely includes the license for the essential objects. Is that correct? Is that what you're trying to say? Based on the commercial license model, excuse me?
Yes, that's what we're saying. We do have a separate connector license for integration capabilities to the Touchpoint, but we normally sell it as a bundled offering on a subscription price.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. And on the question, will this webinar be available as a video for future review? Yes, definitely. We have recorded it. We will publish it on the partner portal. Okay. Anybody else for any questions? I'm looking if anybody else has raised their hands. I don't see any more raised hands, so I'll try to summarize then what the core of what Michael has said. And like I said, a lot of the technical coding CSS code went over my head as well, but I think it's very, very interesting to understand how the customizations are done. And the key that we need to take away is that the platform comes with default CSS files and settings. What you can do is each individual CSS setting that sits in the default files can be overridden by your own CSS files. So the core is not to change the ones that we give with the platform, because if you have an update of our platform, they will be updated, but to create your own files that then with only the settings you want to change. So you have an override of default values. And that is the best way to do the customizations. To know where the different characteristics are of the different elements in your screen, how to optimize it, we have indeed not given a wide booklet with every single settings, because what Michael showed us as a second important point is Your browser gives you the capability to investigate which element it is, and every software developer will know this, and also the people in your organizations that work with this, how to set your browsers so that those elements are visible, and you can see exactly which CSS settings are at that moment responsible for the look and feel of that single element in your point. And then the final remark from my side is indeed from, like we said at the first point, don't override our settings, but create a folder within the Touchpoint directories which has your own settings, and then within the admin point you can actually point to simply to the look and feel file that contains all the settings you want changed as a new standard that overrides the other ones, and that can be done on a system-wide basis, on a tenant-specific basis, or even on an individual group basis. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. If you want in a contact center to have a blue group and a red group with just the background color different, that's very easy to do, as Michael showed with his St. Patrick's Day example. Okay, if there's no final questions, and I'm just looking at the list, nobody has further raised a question element. Only question is, can Touchpoint admin modify the agent name to reflect on the Touchpoint pane and not on the tab title? That's probably Michael for you one. I don't think that's one.
So let me see if I got it right. You want to change this name from the tab here to be reflected where?
Yes, Michael. Can we reflect that name of the agent instead on the tab be inside on the Touchpoint pane?
To make it somewhere here?
Yes.
It's visible for the agent.
Not CSS is not the right tool for that, because CSS can only change presentation of existing divs. I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure that via CSS we control this title of the tab, but we need a way to put it somewhere here. So from the top of my head, if you want to do something like that, since if you want to create Touchpoint customization for that, you do have as part of the agent object his name. So it is available for you to display. You just need to create or modify one of the HTML files in Touchpoint. For example, if you would like to put it somewhere here on the background screen, so you will need to customize that the index HTML file of Touchpoint. It's not something that you can do with a CSS, but you can do it as part of a functional gadget or combination of functional gadget and regular gadget.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I see one final hand raised for Mark. Let me try to unmute you. Yeah, Mark. You want to ask your question, Mark? Or maybe not. Okay. Anybody else for a question? I see here. Anybody else raise their hands? No. Oh, wait. Here at the top, we still have a question from Anis or Abraham.
Hi. Yeah, this is Anish here. Do you have different CSS for each and every gadget, or there is only one CSS which is look and feel? Suppose if I wanted to change the look and feel of chat window only, so directly go to chat CSS and do the customization and save it, or look and feel also need to be edited?
This is quite a tricky question. as a developers of Touchpoint, we keep a LS file and a matching CSS file for any kind of gadget. So you see here a LS file and a CSS file for chat. There is one for every gadget. But this CSS file or this LS file is not something that you would like to modify, because this includes every, for example, this chat LS, that includes everything all the CSS and LS definition for chat. And as I mentioned before, if you will change this, since this is a factory file, this will be overridden by the next upgrade. So if you know that you want to change something in chat, you can have a look on this chat.les file. Most of the chances that the change that you want to make is here somewhere. And in this case, it will be easier for you to take the CSS file, because here everything is already compiled. Select the place you want to change. Don't change it here, just copy it to a look and feel customization file and put it there. In this way, you can enjoy free upgrades, because if you will change this chat CSS file, that your change will be effective, but it will be overridden next time we'll upgrade Touchpoint and override this file. So if you want to take things from this CSS file, it's a good way to look for things. Just copy paste them to the look and feel or the customization file. Don't change them directly on the factory file.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Have we got any more? I just see one more hand raised for Tausif Nabi, but you've muted yourself. Yeah, now I can unmute you. If you want to ask your question, if you unmute yourself. Tausif, if you want to ask a question, you have to unmute yourself before you can ask the question. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to check, like, we have different roles in the contact centers, like supervisors and agents. So is there any possibility to have a different look and feel for supervisor screen and different for agent screen?
That's a very, very nice question. So first I would say that the indication if an agent is regular agent or a supervisor is one of the property of the agent object. So this is the base for your customization. Now, once you establish that you have a parameter to notify you if this is an agent or supervisor, you need to take this into effect with the CSS files. Now, CSS does not handles easily parameters. It does not something that can be coded like if that parameter is equal X, then do that. If that parameter is equal Y, do other thing. However, I have to tell the truth that I never use this myself, but I do remember reading something about less files do know to run JavaScript command. Actually, this is why we add this -- JavaScript, because in one of our less file there is a function. I never tried it with trying to read a parameter, so I don't know if just for compilation time or runtime. For my understanding with CSS, I don't understand quite how it can be done in runtime. So CSS is not the right tool to do that. But if you would like to do that, the way to do it is that you need to write some code. You can do it as a functional gadget, where you, after the login, you identify if the user is a regular agent or a supervisor, and then you get a hold on the DOM elements. You do a get element by ID, and you change the class property of that element to represent a different style that that you have created. It's a very similar thing to just what we showed here in the debug. So when I just inspect an element, I just look for this element in the DOM. So in this case, I have this div, and it has a class of razor, and this is the definition of the razor. So if you'd like to do something programmatically to be different between types of agent, in the CSS customization, you will need to create two classes, one for the agent, one for the supervisor, with the CSS definition that you want to set for each one of them. Then in a functional gadget, you will do a get element by ID or a get element by class, and look for this specific element that you want to change. And then by a very simple JavaScript code, you just change the class attribute from razor to something else, and that will change it. You can also set in a JavaScript code any property of the look and feel. So if you want just to put the background color, you can just call a JavaScript function that changes the background color. But I'm afraid that I think CSS is a bit limited to handle program language. It is static. So my preferred way to do it is in a functional gadget.
Okay, and also please remind that please I'm reminded that we have a very good professional services department that it can help you with any of those customizations if you want to go into very complex customizations outside the normal colors and fonts and etc. It is possible to engage with our professional services that, of course, have the ability to help you with your customizations and work alongside yourselves to build it in the way that you want it. Okay, I'm looking at the time, so I think we're going to close the webinar now. If there's any more follow-up questions, please pop me or Michael or Emily an email, and we try to follow up on that. And like I said, please look forward to another invite for a webinar somewhere in the first half of January, where we will do another webinar, probably on the integration capabilities for gadgets within the Touchpoint client. So thank you all for attending, and we make the recordings available afterwards. Thank you, everybody, and thanks, Michael, for your webinar.
Thanks.